Okay, looks like we're recording and we're ready to begin our session. My name is Bob Ortung, and I'm a research professor here at IRIS, the Institute for European, Russian, and Eurasian Studies. And we're very happy today to have one of our visiting scholars speak on this very timely topic, energy as Russia's tool, the role of Nord Stream 2 in the current crisis. And Martin Jurashek is our speaker. Martin, in addition to being a visiting scholar here at GW, works as an assistant professor at Masaryk University in the Czech Republic. And he's been working on energy security in Central and Eastern Europe, geopolitics, and the transatlantic dimension of energy security. So I'll give the floor to Martin for about 30 minutes, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers. And you can either put your questions in the chat, or after Martin's done speaking, I'll be happy to call on you and you can just ask the question directly to Martin. So Martin, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bo. Thank you for having me. Thank you for this opportunity to speak about this timely topic. Unfortunately, I would say timely topic, because the things that have been happening in the past weeks and escalate the tensions that escalated into war in recent days make this really timely and a pressing issue. My name is Martin Jurashek, and as Bob said, I'm dealing with energy security in my professional life. And one of the things I've been dealing with for quite some time is Nord Stream 2. In a broader on a broader scale on energy security in Europe. So in today's presentation, I'm going to present my take on energy as Russia's tool. What are the determining factors for energy being used as a tool? What are the lessons learned in the Nord Stream 2 case? And I'm also going to give you my estimate or my views to the future, what the future holds for European energy security. So without a further ado, let me first introduce you, for those who are not familiar with the situation in Europe regarding Russian supplies, and regarding the broader energy security issue. What is the situation in Europe? And the situation is this. When we look at Europe and Russia and their energy relation, there is an obvious state of mutual dependence. Russia is the most important supplier of natural resources to Europe, to the European Union and to Europe at large. But at the same time, from the perspective of Europe, Europe is Russia's most important customer. So there is a state mutual dependence. So if you've ever asked yourself the question, who has the bigger stick in this consumer producer relationship, I would say it is a mutual dependence. And the difference is in the impacts of potential curtailments, either curtailments of supplies or curtailments of payments, if you will. Russia, as I said, is the European Union. If we focus on the European Union at this point, European Union is Russia is the European Union's biggest supplier, supplying more than 1/4 of oil and more than 40% of natural gas. And these numbers are likely to increase in the near future and in a midterm outlook. Also, what is also important in this relationship between Europe and Russia is that Russian technologies are very much present in European nuclear power plants, most notably Central and Eastern Europe, which is given historical development and during the Cold War, when most of these nuclear reactors were built, and because these countries were in the Soviet sphere of influence, naturally with just two exceptions that are Romania and Slovenia. reactors in this part of Europe, I mean Central Eastern Europe, are of Russian origin. But that would be a different story and would be probably for a different discussion. So as you can see, there are a lot of patterns that are embedded in the historical development of Europe, mainly in terms of the oil and gas supply chain, the reason why Russia is so important in terms of supplies, and also the routing of the respective pipelines. I mean, both oil and gas pipelines. There are regional differences in terms of energy mix, in terms of energy intensity, in terms of energy utilizations, utilization in terms of transit infrastructure and its density. And when we look at Central Eastern Europe, which is very much being debated these days, Central Eastern Europe are historically transit countries for oil and gas. Because they were on the way between the main producer that is Soviet Union / Russia, and the main consumers in the West. In between their Central Eastern Europe, so naturally these countries have been the transit countries, which is the root of many today's issues and disputes. Case in point, Ukrainian transit, case in point, the Druzhba pipeline and supply curtailments in 1990s. And after all, also Nord Stream 2, which is a bit to circumvent this region. So this is just a quick look at what it looks like in terms of oil supplies. You can see the green lines are the main trunk pipelines bringing oil from Russia, and you can see that Central and Eastern Europe is the transit region. This is a picture related to natural gas supply situation, and by these arrows indicate the trends that have been taking place in Europe. So the red arrow indicates the original supply pattern of natural gas from Russia to Europe, and the supply pattern followed the transit route through Ukraine, which is known for its enormous transit infrastructure. In recent decade or so, I would say 15 years, Russia has been trying to shift the transit to other supply routes to circumvent Central Eastern Europe, to circumvent Ukraine. So most notably the Nord Stream pipeline system, Nord Stream 1, which is being operational since 2011, the very much debated Nord Stream 2, and the pipelines circumventing Ukraine from the south, that is Blue Stream to Turk Stream. And also pipelines that don't cross Ukraine, like Yamal pipeline going through Poland. So I'll mention this once again later in my presentation, but basically the Ukrainian transit route has been steadily declining in last 7 years or so, and it is clearly the least preferred transit option for Russian gas transit to Europe. So now a quick side note on Russia and energy exports, Russia's dependence on energy exports, and the role of energy exports in Russian economy, which will set the scene for our later discussion, as I believe. So this would be for a broader geopolitical discussion, but in 1990s, the Russian economy and its power capacities in general were in a steady decline and in a very bad shape, so to say. Since early 2000s, reforms to regain control of major energy companies took place. It's no coincidence that these reforms took place along with Vladimir Putin stepping into the office of the Russian president. He made it clear since the very beginning that retaking control over energy assets, renationalization, if you will, is the key point on his agenda. It was for Russia. This took place in a very fitting moment, because since early 2000s we saw an increase in mainly oil prices, oil and gas prices that were frequently indexed on oil prices. So basically, increase in commodity prices, which has been a main source of revenues for the Russian state budget. And due to the rising commodity prices in 2000s, Russia was able to bounce back economically into 2000s. So there's a very close correlation between energy prices and how Russia performs economically. And this relation has been confirmed several times in the past 2 decades. I would say most recently in 2014, 2016, during the oil plunge, when the OPEC countries were trying to push some other oil producers from the market, and oil prices went down to $20 or $30 per barrel. That was the time when Russian economy suffered great losses. Ruble depreciated by almost 50% at that time. There was a GDP decrease, year-to-year GDP decrease of over 3% between 2014 2015, and that was a lesson learned for Russia too, which started to build a rainy day fund, if you will, since then, and now is better suited for such situations, or if any oil price plunge takes place again. But the thing is that the dependence of Russian economy on energy commodity exports still prevails, is still a feature. It is still a feature of Russian economy, and it's a potential problem, as you can probably tell. Basically, Russian economy is dependent on exports of natural resources that are, in general, low commodities with low added value. And they are, and the economy, despite the weatherization of the economy, if you will, is still very much dependent on economic cycles and the development in commodity prices. The biggest we saw the biggest the most important development in terms of dependence on oil and gas export we saw in 2000s, between 2000 and 2010, which is when the oil exports from Russia increased by 2/3 and natural gas by 15%, and these were all additions to the Russian dependency on the revenues. So nowadays, natural gas exports account for about 14% of total exports from Russia. And what is even more striking is that oil exports account for over 40% of everything that is exported from Russia. So you can clearly see that Russian economy is indeed heavily dependent on how the oil and gas sectors perform, and what the price situation looks like. So to put it simply, natural resources account for more than half exports, and generally in terms of GDP, 15 to 20%. Until last year was 20% Russian GDP. Between 2020 and 2021, the share of oil and gas exports in Russian GDP decreased to some 15%, but still it assumes a large portion of the Russian economic output. Now, let's take a quick look at what enables weaponization of energy, or turning energy supplies into weapon, if you will. It is hinged on specific features of respective sectors or respective commodities. Generally speaking, it is dependent on physical features of the commodity, whether it's to put it simply, whether it's in a gaseous, of gaseous nature or liquid nature, when speaking about oil and gas, way of marketing, the contractual conditions, market concentration, that is how many actors are present on the market, and market foreclosure, that means if there are any thresholds that the actors need to cross to get on the market. So normally, when speaking about energy weapon, based on our historical experience, I would say most people would say oil as energy weapon, because the oil weapon is actually a term. It's been coined in 1970s during the oil crisis. It is to some extent true that oil still can be used as energy weapon, because when you look at the enabling factors, there is, and I'm taking the consumer perspective here. From the consumer perspective, a consumer is structurally dependent on a certain supplier. There's the need for uninterrupted flow of oil. Yes, you can store oil for some time, but you cannot stockpile indefinitely, right? And there's a technological setting in oil refineries that basically determine which type of crude can be processed in a given refinery, and if you don't have access to that particular crude, then it can cause supply curtailments or supply irregularities. On the other hand, from the consumer perspective, on the plus side, oil is globally traded. So generally speaking, you can get oil from anywhere, from someone else, from a different supplier, if your particular supplier is unable or unwilling to supply you with the contracting commodity. There are different means of transport. Oil is very easily transportable and storable. You can use pipelines. You can use tankers. You can put it on a truck. Basically, I always say that you can put oil into a bucket and take it anywhere. It's very easy to transport it. It's very easy to get it from somewhere else if you don't have any other supplies, any other alternative, and it's storable, which is something that is not the case. I mean, not all these features are the case in natural gas, and which is, and I'm getting to my point, which makes natural gas actually much better if you want to use it as energy weapon or as energy leverage. There's also a structural dependency, that stems from nature of contracts and need for uninterrupted flow. Typically in natural gas, until quite recently, well, let me put it this way. Natural gas is of gaseous state. That means it needs to be sealed. So you cannot put it into a bucket just like oil and take it anywhere. It has to be sealed, and it has to be transported in sealed containers. So therefore, you're much more dependent on physical infrastructure in terms of natural gas. That's why you are much more dependent on pipelines that can serve only so many customers within its reach. So this infrastructure is very rigid. You cannot build a trunk pipeline just like that. It takes years and takes a lot of money. That's why we've seen we saw in the past, we saw a partitioned market, bilateral contracts between suppliers and consumers, contracts, long-term contracts that gave the investors the ability to calculate the return of investments, conditions like take or pay clauses, oil indexation, and so on and so forth. Basically cementing the relation between the supplier and the consumer for a very long time, which basically excludes the possibility of a functioning market. Luckily, again, from the consumer perspective, there are new means of transport that are have been slowly but steadily changing the landscape. I mean, LNG. Still, we see the market compared to the oil market is very much partitioned, regionalized, if you will. But thanks to the LNG, we are able to regularly get gas supplies from areas that otherwise would be outside our reach. Also, there are new producers on the market, case in point, United States, that became a major natural gas producer and exporter thanks to the shale gas revolution, as it is commonly called. So in the past, I did several research projects trying to find out what are the key factors in terms of using natural gas as a tool or as a weapon, if you will. I conducted research in Central Eastern Europe on several countries, several case studies, and this is what I found. There are two most important factors if a country wants to doesn't want to be pressured using natural gas as a weapon, and I call them the hardware and the software. The hardware is the pipelines, the diversification, and that this is the most important factor for anyone who wants to increase the energy security of the given country. The other important factor is what I call the software, and that is rules that are applied and enforced. And when looking at the region of Central and Eastern Europe, it's a great petri dish to study the differences between countries with diversified and non-diversified import portfolio and supply infrastructure, and between countries that are members of, and apply the rules of the internal energy market, the European Union's internal energy market, and states that don't. There is a clear difference that countries that are not diversified, that don't have that don't apply the rules, are much more more prone to be subjects of political pressure from Russia using natural gas. What are the other important factors that come into play in individual cases? And we can discuss them in a greater detail during the Q&A session if you want. Foreign policy discourse and political culture, that is the nature of relations between Russia and the given country, the political culture, whether the country is prone to corruption in energy related deals, and so on and so forth. That very much relates to personal links and individual aspirations, which basically is a politicization of a particular deal for as a part of a certain politician's plan, that politicians establishing personal links with the Russian government in order to secure better supply deals. Generally speaking, involvement of governmental officials on either of these two sides is usually a red flag. And also indebtedness or exploitable vulnerability of the client state. Case in point, but the Balkan states where there are where debts are present quite often are very often pressured by Russia using this vulnerability. Okay, so very quickly, because I see that I'm not catching up with the timeline. Very quickly, by the internal energy market rules, for those who are not familiar with the term, basically this is how the European Union's internal market has developed in the sphere of electricity and gas markets. From the Single European Act of 1987 throughout the 1990s, throughout the 2000s, up until 2009, up until the third energy package, which is in many ways the culmination of the liberalization. And that basically turned the former market creators, the big suppliers that built the pipelines and cemented the relations with the customers. They were the market creators. These rules turned them into market subjects and put European Commission in a driver's seat as an oversight over the market. That caused the shots if someone crossed the line, violated the rules, and so on and so forth. The most recent update is the gas directive update of 2019, which extends the internal energy market rules to pipelines to and from third countries, which basically should apply also to Nord Stream 2, to any pipeline that was built after May 2019, which is the case of Nord Stream 2. These are the main rules of the main principles of the internal energy market rules. Separating of suppliers from infrastructure owners, allowing third parties into infrastructure. Anyone willing to join the infrastructure, the market should be allowed to do so. Prohibition of destination clauses. That means that countries can resell their natural gas to anyone, and basically banning all indexation. So what are the lessons we've learned in terms of politicization of gas supplies? Gazprom is motivated to maintain its position with the view to EU decarbonization plans. And because the company sees that its position has deteriorated a lot since the introduction of the internal energy market rules, it wants to sell as much gas as possible while it still can on the European market. This is also the motivation behind Nord Stream 1 and 2, to get to the most important part of the market, which is the Western Europe, as soon as possible. Because my estimate is that Gazprom has like 20 more, maybe 30 years before the EU will phase out fossil fuels to the extent that it will become only a minor part of the energy mix. My point here, when looking at what Gazprom has been doing and what the Russian government has been doing with Gazprom as a potential tool, is don't look at the actual behavior, look at the context and the timing. Cutting supplies over a debt issue, over a transit fees issue, is not a politicization per se, but what actually is a politicization is when the government slash the company does that, or in which context and in what context. As a company, Gazprom clearly strives not to compromise its position, but and tries to appear like a normal standard company. But at the same time, you cannot overlook the fact that it is Kremlin's proxy when needed and when the conditions that I mentioned on my previous slide allow. So here are some examples. We can get back to it in a greater detail during the Q&A if you want. Ukrainian crisis of 2000, the crisis in Ukraine in 2009, when Putin was personally intervening. The timing again was the issue in the Balkans, bringing up the gas debt just before the winter to put a pressure on these countries. In Bulgaria, conditionality in gas deals in exchange for speeding up South Stream related legislation. Moldova, which is a prime example of country being pressured over gas supplies. Or even in Hungary or Greece, when a foreign policy discourse of these countries vis-a-vis Russia at that time played a very important role too. I'm not sure, Bob, if I can eat into the Q&A a bit. I have a couple more slides.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Go ahead, and then we'll get to the questions.
So what is the situation in terms of Gazprom's supply to Europe? Currently on liquid markets, very flexible markets in Western Europe, spot prices and pipeline prices of gas delivered by Gazprom have been aligning recently. which might point to the fact that Gazprom's position is weakening, because normally the common understanding is that the LNG or the spot prices are higher, and that Gazprom can easily undershoot the spot price, which is still the case. It's still the case in some places, in some areas, but the most liquid on most liquid markets, the spot prices are very much aligned. We saw in recent months, we saw that really the natural gas market, or LNG market at least, has been globalizing. It's because we saw what the increase, the rebound in gas demand in Southeast Asia did to the situation in Europe, when basically all LNG tankers went to Southeast Asia. Also, we must not overlook the fact that the indigenous production of natural gas in Europe has been declining, meaning that Europe will need Russian gas. That's a fact. In the midterm outlook, there will be probably an increase and then a plateau, after which the demand for Russian gas, for gas in general, will likely decline. But now here we are talking 15 to 20 years time. Still, Europe is the key market for Gazprom. As I said, Gazprom's position is likely to be even more important on the European gas market. But please note that this is the estimate or evaluation that I did a couple of days ago, or before the war broke out. So there might be changes, but when looking at the trends, this is what we can see. China, contrary to what is often being heard, is not a direct competition for Russian for the European market, at least not in terms of pipeline supplies. There's different infrastructure for China, different infrastructure for Europe, and most importantly, different gas sources. Gazprom will probably hold a monopolistic position in pipeline exports within Russia, but that would be a different story on the internal situation in Russia. In terms of LNG, there's a bigger player that is private-owned company Novatek, a Russian company. Now, what's the future outlook? As I said, LNGs are becoming more and more competitive. As another incentive to build Nord Stream 1 and 2 Turk Stream, we saw that the transit cost component in Russia's pipeline supplies has been rising in recent years. Basically, the fees that Gazprom had to pay the transit countries. So that was among the incentives why Gazprom decided to build the pipeline circumventing Central Eastern Europe. So you can say that there was a policy reasoning behind the pipeline, and I think that is what is being missed sometimes in the related discussion. That it's when Gazprom is confronted, the company can always put a economic reasoning on the table, which doesn't mean that there's no geopolitical reasoning behind that. But there is a economic reasoning that Gazprom can put on the table and make it look like it is all about the economy of the endeavor. In terms of market contracts, Russian suppliers are still very strong in long-term contracts, where a stable supply is the key, and they can give a huge price discounts, which is often very attractive for some. So this is basically what we've already addressed. We can get to the future outlook later during the session. Now, very quickly on Nord Stream 2, which is something I believed you came here for. I called it the headline, "A Tale of Disunity and an Important Lesson." Why is it so? So basically, Nord Stream 1 was put in operation in 2011. Even then, it was condemned by some, most notably by Poland, which has remained an opponent of this pipeline system ever since. And in 2015, Gazprom, along with several energy companies, signed a contract to build a second string. Just to give you a perspective, the first string is 55 BCM per year in terms of capacity. The second one is the same, 55 BCM per year, which totally is over 100 BCM per year, which is over half of the amount of natural gas supplied to Europe annually. So if you remember the picture with two green and one red arrow, clearly there's a shift. Gazprom shifts the pipeline supplies to pipelines directly connecting Russian suppliers to the most important markets in Europe, while circumventing Central and Eastern European, the former transit countries. It's a huge investment, 11 billion USD. Gazprom covered one half of the cost, while the companies covered the other half. That's why it is also so sensitive, because there are private money in this endeavor. And I think this is the key to understand why some European to the understanding why some European countries were so reluctant to condemn Nord Stream 2, not mentioning to cancel the project completely. So at February 2019, there was a dispute between France and Germany on the gas directive update, which basically applies the inter-energy market rules on external pipelines coming from third parties. And that is when the lesson starts, because basically after some time, Germany was given a blank check by France and other opponents, and the responsibility to apply these measures is on Germany. So basically, France washed its hand of this issue, and now it is on the German regulator Bundesnetz again to decide whether the pipeline Nord Stream 2 is in line with the European regulations or not. So that's a lot of pressure on just a single regulator, instead of making this EU-wide issue, which I think it should be. In 2019, 2020, the former president's administration, US president's administration, imposed sanctions on the Nord Stream 2 and the companies building it, which made the pipeline company, the Swiss company, Ossis, to withdraw from the project, although it was 90% ready at that time in 2019, and that's why the construction was dragging for so long. With the new president in 2021, sanctions were lifted because they were souring relations between Germany and the United States. In September 2021, Nord Stream 2 was finished. Now it is waiting for certification. The certification was suspended and sanctions reimposed as a reaction to Russian aggression. So what was an issue? Basically, the Nord Stream 2 pipeline the construction started in 2015, which was after Crimea annexation, which was after downing of the MH17, in times when the relations between Russia and the West were already very bad. So if this wasn't enough for a red flag, I don't know what is, because back then we could see that issues with the pipeline were coming, and clearly there are divisions among the European countries. Between Poland and the Baltics, the most vocal opponents of the pipeline, and Germany, that is a staple of the situation. Slovakia and Czech Republic, surprisingly for some, actually tacitly support the pipeline because they would become an important transit countries in the north-south direction. Hungary is not interested in the case. France only stepped in briefly during the discussions on the gas directive update. Then we had this dispute between Germany and the US, and even between the US and the EU back in 2019. EU didn't like the fact that the US sanctions were impacting European companies. This is just to illustrate the decrease of the importance of the Ukrainian transit. So you can clearly see that over time, there is a strong preference for non-Ukrainian pipelines. And this is even before the new transit deal with Ukraine was signed in 2019. So what's the current situation in terms of Nord Stream 2? The certification is now suspended, but regardless, Germany still seems rather committed. It's the certification is suspended. The pipeline is not canceled altogether. At least last time I checked this morning. We still can hear the narrative of commercial project, which is given by the fact that 50% of the invested money in the project are of private nature. Basically, what from someone who's been dealing with the European integration, Nord Stream 2 revealed a clear disunity among the EU members, not able to come to terms on what is the definition of energy security, and not being able to see that energy security in Western Europe is defined differently than in Central Eastern Europe, where it has a strong historical and political connotations. On the other hand, the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, which is the basic treaty of the European Union, has the principle of solidarity enshrined in one of its articles, and it basically says that also in terms of energy, there should be a solidarity among EU members, having the functioning of the market and energy security of individual countries in mind. There was a ruling of the European Court of Justice just last year that basically put a roadblock on the use of a pipeline bringing Russian gas through Nord Stream 1 to the German grid. And it used the principle of solidarity as an argument that it endangers the energy security of Central Eastern European countries. So we might see a development in this, that this might be a formative moment for a closer unity in terms of energy security in Europe. I'm nearing the end. So the future outlook, and please know that this is the pre-war estimate, as I call it, because the situation is developing. LNG is and will be competitive in terms of energy supplies. Gazprom will be pushing to reroute its transit supplies to non-Ukrainian transit. Gazprom will be trying to still implement the long-term contracts where it can, but on the other hand, there's a push from the European Union to decarbonize its economy. You've probably heard about the 2050 climate neutrality goals, and these goals, if strong enough, if energy solidarity is implemented, they might prevail over the market logic in some cases. Gazprom will probably be the main pipeline exporter of natural gas from Russia, while LNG might coming from Russia from other companies. Russia will be among the LNG export leaders too by the end of this decade, and is likely to be very, very competitive. Now, sorry, I know I've eaten into your lunch break, probably. Sorry for that. Thank you for your attention. This is my email. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to respond. I've wrote a couple of books on the topics I've elaborated on today, so feel free to drop me a message. I'll be happy to respond, and I'm looking forward to your questions and comments. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Martin. So now we have about at least 15 minutes for questions. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. There's a button at the bottom of the Zoom screen, raise hand. And maybe Martin, I think at this point, if you stop sharing, then we'll have a full gallery view, and you could put your email in the chat if you want, so people will have access to that. Um, if you have a question, please raise your hand. I'll call on you and you could ask it, or you could write it in the chat. Maybe as we prepare, as audience members prepare questions, let me ask a couple myself. So let me just start with a quick first question, and then we'll get to, if others have questions, we'll be happy to do that. If Europe, with the case of Iran, obviously there's been some very strong sanctions placed on Iran. Iran cannot sell its energy in foreign markets. Is that an option in this conflict? If Europe and the United States decided that was a route they wanted to take, is that a possibility?
If you mean if the question is, does Europe have alternatives if there's no oil and gas from Russia? I think what we need to recognize, or we need to pay attention to, is the scale of supply interruptions. Clearly, from what I presented, it is obvious that Russia is too big in terms of supplies to be completely replaced in a short term. So that, I think, is the general question. At the same time, there are major, and oil and gas are different stories. Oil is not that much of a problem, as we saw in Central and Eastern Europe in past 2 years, when there was an issue on the Druzhba pipeline with the contamination. The Druzhba pipeline stopped completely in 2019, and we barely noticed in Europe. So there is so clearly, in terms of oil, there is a possibility to cover the short-term or even mid-term supply curtailments. In terms of natural gas, with the market growing more and more global, there is a fair chance that LNG will play a bigger role. But also, still, the market is not 100% flexible, not even in Europe. You have an oversupply in some parts of Europe. In Northwest Europe, you have an abundance of capacity, import capacity in Italy, in Spain, and some of the projects like the East Mediterranean pipeline will probably not be even built. So individual markets might not have a problem if Russian supplies are not available. But if we are talking Central Eastern Europe, this still might be a problem. The further to the west and the east, the further to the east and further to the south you go, the bigger the share of Russian supplies and the bigger the potential problem. The further to the west and north you go, it's generally a flexible market that can get oil supplies from anywhere using LNG supplies.
Okay, so I think we have at least a couple of questions. I think, Veliko, did you want to ask a question? I think I interrupted you. Maybe not. So here, we have one from Vera. So let me read this out. We recently saw Donald Tusk bashing Italy, Hungary, and Germany for failing to ban Russia from SWIFT. How strongly is this related to these countries' dependency on Russian natural gas? And if it is strongly related, what does this tell us about the future? Is there any chance that Germany will change its position on SWIFT, or are their hands tied with regards to this powerful sanction?
That's an excellent question. A question I've been asking myself in the previous days. But I'm not an expert in financial operations, so I can only give you what my probably a bit biased perspective. The thing is that for Germany, Russia is an important trade partner. It is, and I'm pretty sure that the Nord Stream 2 pipeline issue plays a role in it, because the pipeline is important for Germany regarding its future decarbonization plans or energy transition in general. So there is probably a fair chance that Nord Stream played a role. Italy also has, and well, this is not just about energy, I have to say. It's also about the general foreign policy discourse of these countries that very much ties into the energy sphere as well. One of the key points of my research is that foreign policy and energy policy policies are very much intertwined in a lot of cases, and I think this is the case. So in terms of Italy, it's probably a long-term foreign policy discourse, also a long-term trade partnership. And in terms of Hungary, you can see a clear intertwining between Hungary's domestic political situation, its foreign policy discourse, the way it utilizes the personal ties between Viktor Orban and Vladimir Putin, the personal aspirations, which is something I mentioned, of Viktor Orban in terms of domestic policy, and how securing an individual deal on natural gas plays in his hands in terms of his picture, his domestic picture. So generally speaking, if the question is, let me just go through it very quickly. If the question was whether this is related to energy, I would say yes, at least to a certain extent, but it is very much related to the long-term position of these states vis-a-vis Russia in terms of their trade partnership, which also includes energy.
Okay, and then there's another question here from Marianne. Maybe the role of Algeria as a deliverer of gas should be mentioned. Its gas delivery is highly politicized with Western Sahara. So would that be, North Africa, would that be another source of gas for Europe? And how likely is that to be a good supplier?
Definitely. It's a very important, so Algerian gas is very, very important. The thing is, if we look at the potential of European gas demand for the future, and the potential of suppliers around Europe to deliver these additional volumes, there's no match to the Russian capacity. Russia is the most prominent supplier in terms of increasing its future supplies in the face of growing European demand. This is not to say that it's the only and that it will be the only supplier, but it is, and it is the most important supplier. It will be the most important supplier, and its importance will even decrease because it's the only country that has the spare capacity to address the increase of European demand, especially when we, as we see the decline in Europe's domestic production. The Groningen gas field offshore of Netherlands will be closing this year, if I'm not mistaken, and that is a seminal shift in terms of European indigenous production. So yes, African sources indeed are important, but also you have to consider the infrastructure and the capacity of the infrastructure to deliver the gas from there to regions where the gas is needed in Europe.
So the floor is open. Please, if you have a question, raise your hand or put it in the chat box. Maybe as we wait for next question, Martin, could you tell us what is Russia going to do next? How given the obviously hard to predict or imagine, but assuming the war, well, we don't know what's going to happen, but what is Russia's end game in all this, and what is their likely behavior towards Europe going forward, or what should we be thinking about to try and think about that?
Well, these are some tough questions, really. I mean, I think this what we are witnessing is something that I think No, I'm inclined to say no one expected. This is it is very hard to predict what's going to happen. I would not look at what Russia is doing for now. I would look at what some other major players in Europe are doing. One of them being Germany, that, as I mentioned, only suspended the certification of Nord Stream 2, is not really willing to impose the hardest measures, like cutting off Russia from the financial markets, from the SWIFT system. I think they're still hoping in Germany, in Germany's perspective, that things will normalize in the future, and that they will be able to continue. I think that the possibility for this is thinning every day. What is the end game? And okay, so let's leave the energy domain for a while. I would say what we're witnessing here is a bit at rewriting the geopolitical map of Europe, the geopolitical map that we've known since the fall of the Cold War. That a lot of people, a lot of analysts, including myself, I must admit, have thought that it's that Russia will push us, and then we'll normalize, that there won't be a full-scale war. So now we are seeing that the landscape is being rewritten. I think that this might very well end in a different setting compared to what we were used to in terms of United Nations Security Council, and Russia being part of the whole setting after the Second World War. That being said, even during the and coming back to energy sphere, that being said, if I see that there's still a difference between attacking Ukraine and attacking NATO members, and cutting off oil and gas supplies to Europe as such, because that, I would say, is almost the weapon of last resort. And that so that being said, I think that these are not the immediate options we are looking at. I'm pretty sure I did not fully answer the question, but the situation, as I said, is really hard to grasp, and I'm really wary of making any predictions, because this is really.
Okay, we have one more question, so why don't we finish with this question? Is the German narrative about this as just an economic narrative, or is it also an ideological narrative? Obviously, it's connected to German narratives about itself, a national pride narrative in a new form, a sophisticated interpreter of Russia to the West, mediator between East and Russia, and East equaling Russia, and the West in this narrative, America, maintainer of the dialogue with Russia. So how do you see, yeah, you were coming to Germany, but what is, I guess Germany is the key player here. What is the role there?
Obviously, Germany is the key player. And also, I think this the core of this question basically summarizes why back in 2019, when the gas directive update was debated, at some point France and the other countries basically said, okay, Germany, you do your thing, just make sure it's in line with the EU rules, because obviously you have a strong interest on coming to terms with Russia on the pipeline and lots of other things. So I think the question is right, suggesting that Germany has a special bond with Russia, which is historically embedded even before the Second World War, but after the Second World War, probably a sense of guilt from Germany. We could see that Germany was very reluctant to send any military material to Ukraine, which was in line with their long-standing reluctance to take part in any conflicts, even as peacekeepers. I think Germany finds itself in a very troubled situation when it wants to implement its policy decarbonization, which is basically the emblematic policy of Germany, and a lot of other things have been following the suit. And this, what is happening with Nord Stream and with the conflict, is something that Germany probably hoped would never happen, and now is not able to formulate its position. And now it's not doesn't know what to do with the situation. Also, the fact that Angela Merkel retired and the new government has been only trying to define its position, trying to find its position on the European stage is another problem. We see that there's I've mentioned the disunity in terms of dealing with energy supplies, but there's also a clear disunity in terms of foreign policy in general. I mean, when we look at the current situation, we see that even Germany and France are not on the same page. France, from my perspective, is trying to step up its position within the European Union, becoming the main driving force, which is also partly probably related to the French presidential elections that are about to take place very soon. So you can see that there are other layers of this issue. So generally speaking, to put it simply, yes, Germany is important, will be important. And it's the Europe's strongest economy. So that's why without Germany, there cannot be a clear-cut solution. But I think that's because Germany currently doesn't know what to do with the issue, and is unsure about its own position in Europe.
Okay, Martin, thank you very much. Thank you for an excellent presentation. We've come to the end of the hour, so so thank you all for attending. Obviously, we'll all be keeping an eye on the situation and hope for a peaceful resolution, although I'm not sure how that's going to happen. But thank you very much, and look forward to further conversations. So
thank you for having me. Have a good day.
Mhm.